get full access to RFR only on Patreon. Become a member of the RFR Patreon community to get more Rebel Force Radio. Bonus shows and content are available right now only at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Yeah, I should have taken a page out of the Jimmy Mack playbook. As I was at Target, my local Target, just a couple of days ago, in fruitless search of the retro vintage Star Wars figures from Hasbro. These are the ones that look an awful lot like the original action figures from 1978. And they're right now a Target exclusive, and they were supposed to be out since May the 4th. And so our pal Adam Giffy, I don't know if it's Giffy or I really need to ask him if it's Giffy or Jiffy, but he emailed me and said that he went to something like 5, 6, 8, something insane, different numbers of Targets in the Northeast Ohio area in order to get all 6 of these figures. And he said in every case, what he did is he went to the electronics section. He had to go to not the toys, the electronics, and ask them if they had the DCPI number, whatever it is, DPCI, DCPI, the stock number, to the guy or girl in electronics and see if they had them. So I decided to do that. I'm at the Target, and I'm like, screw it. I'm tired of being disappointed. So I go up to the electronics, very nice guy there, and I tell him, I'm like, if I give you a DCPI number or whatever it is, DPCI, will you be able to look in your computer, your fancy computer, and tell me if you have the item in stock? I should have said, hey, right off the bat, I'm a full-grown man that still collects Star Wars toys.
Yeah.
Do you have? I should have just owned it, but I'm trying to play it cool, and I'm like, if I give you the stock number, can you look it up? So he looks it up, and he's like, is this a Star Wars thing? I'm like, yes, it is.
Say it loud, say it proud.
And so keep in mind, I'm looking for a toy. I'm talking to the guy in electronics, and the next thing out of his mouth is, did you check the men's clothing area?
I told you.
Men's clothing?
Did I not tell you this?
I don't remember you telling me men's clothing.
It must have been the week you were off the air. Because this was discussed. I've had a lot of people reaching out to me saying, thank you so much for this tip on where to find these action figures. Yeah, it's a Father's Day tie-in where they're trying to play on Dad's nostalgia. Can't think of what to get Dad for Father's Day? How about this trip down memory lane?
Well, see, there you go. That in that sense, it makes sense. But you should have seen the look on my face when he asked me if I checked men's clothing. I'm like, I'm not looking for underoos. I'm looking for retro. Could Hasbro make it more difficult to describe this in a store? Like, they're vintage. They're not the vintage collection. They're retro, but vintage.
It's called the Retro Collection.
Yes, it is.
Or if you look at that sticker they put on the cards for each and every one, it's the Retro Collection, Collection Serie.
Serie. Yeah. Okay, so I got to tell you, so I didn't find the figures. I did find the Death Star board game, which, according to your real brother and my brother in the Force, Billy Mack, has been re-released multiple times, this Death Star board game.
It has.
He's like, I don't need another one of those. He was kind of annoyed that the Tarkin was packed into that. He's got several. But they have the Grand Moff Tarkin. He's packed in there. So I did find that, and I brought it home, and I'm sitting here, and I'm looking at it, and I'm looking around the palatial Rebel Force Radio Studios, thinking of a place to display it in all its glory. And I'm looking at that big sticker, Jim, that you referenced. This isn't like a little, like quarter-size sticker. This thing is like 2 inches in diameter. Mm-hmm. This sticker. It's huge. It takes up like the whole card. And I remember seeing things online about, I was able to successfully remove it. And so I take a little X-Acto blade, and I'm getting some, look, this is going to come off real easily. And I'm tearing it. I'm like, this is great. This is going to come off perfectly. And then all of a sudden, all I see is white.
Rip,
yes. And I pulled off, I thought at first, like, maybe that's just some, very aggressive adhesive there, but it's not. It was actually the artwork. And I was like, oh, God, this is going back. That's going back to the store.
Wait, going back?
Well, it's going back. I'm just going to, I made a mistake. I made a miscalculation, and, it's a write-off. They'll take care of it. And I'll just exchange it for another one. And, nobody gets hurt. Nobody gets hurt.
Okay.
Come on.
All right. I had better luck, but it was an awkward road to success because I also had an experience with Target employees that I really didn't want to have. But I was at Target, and like you, I only succeeded in finding the escape from the Death Star game with the Tarkin figure there, and that's all I really want. So that is all you want. You're not interested in the other ones, right? Is this true? No, I'm going for all of it now.
Oh, okay. All right.
I have been bitten by this bug.
Okay.
I see the nostalgic value in having these things. And plus, of course, I have like 5,000 action figures in my house. What difference is it going to make if I get 10 more or what have you? But this looks like a fun line to collect.
Yes.
And something that I could get in on from the ground floor, as opposed from the current vintage collection that's out there that has had so many releases that have slid by me. I'll never be able to get a complete set of those. I know Kyle Newman was always really focused on having a complete collection of the modern vintage line.
Yes.
Carded.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it was a real big deal when that Wedge Antilles figure came out for Kyle, too. It was a hard-to-get exclusive. And I managed to score him for the gang. So high fives for me. Yippee.
Oh, yeah. I love those texts. You never know when you get a text from one of us, that happens to be on a toy run. It's like, hey, does anybody need this? Anybody need that? So
like you, scoring that Tarkin action figure, I also am offended by that ugly-looking sticker. The sticker is just ugly. It's an ugly-looking sticker.
Yeah, it's not even good design.
No, it's terrible. It's just, it looks like something you can make at home on your desktop computer. You could make a lot of cool things at home now. There's just no imagination in the sticker. It's just
it's bad.
Lame.
It's bad. It doesn't look Star Wars at all. It doesn't look.
It's a big bowl of lame sauce right there on the Tarkin action figure card back. So I had been researching this, and people were saying there is this adhesive cleaner you could purchase, and it has a brand name. And the brand name is a brand name I don't like to say out loud in public, because the brand name is Goo Gone. And when I'm standing in the aisleways of a large store like a Target, I don't want to be saying I'm in the cleaning aisle where the cleaning materials are. And I don't want to approach someone saying, I need Goo Gone. And then, because assumptions can be made. And for people who don't understand what this actual substance is, they might be thinking,
sure,
where's he been putting goo?
Right. Well,
So
and the
this
way
is-
it goes down is that you ask very discreetly to the Goo Gone, for the Goo Gone to the employee. He's like, oh, yes, sir. Let me find it. Hey, Freddie, have you seen the Goo Gone?
No, that's exactly
this
what
guy needs the Goo Gone.
Well, what happened was it wasn't so much yelling about it. They use technology. They all have these radios. And so I just went up to this one lady and I said, hey, she has a red shirt there in the Target. Yeah. And I said, hey, have you ever heard of adhesive cleaner called Goo Gone? And she's like, hold on. And then I hear this click, and I hear it like all over the store as she like grabs her walkie-talkie. Attention team, attention team, attention team. It was like echoing like Lou Gehrig at Yankee Stadium's farewell speech. We have a customer. We have a customer. We have a customer. It was like Darth Maul in Savage Opress in that cave.
Is that you, brother?
Attention team. We have a guest. They called me a guest. And that's another thing, too, at Target. They're all very creepily saying hello to you, like everyone. It'd be like,
well, that's the new. That is customer service.
There's been some training program. There's been some videos sent out to the store or something because they're all saying hello to me, and it's too much now. It's just too much. You saw the other one say hello to me 5 feet ago. You don't have to say hello to me. I'm looking for Goo Gone, okay? And so now they're announcing it. We have a guest looking for Goo Gone. And I'm like, oh, jeez. It's like, hold on, we'll look for the Goo Gone. We don't have Goo Gone in stock.
They spring to action.
Wait, we might have Goo Gone. We do have Goo Gone. Wait, we don't have Goo Gone. And meanwhile, you and Billy Mack are sending me texts because I was too embarrassed to ask, and you guys were telling me where to look, and I couldn't find it in those aisles, so I had to go to the professionals at this point. And right at this moment, you guys are sending me texts saying, it doesn't appear on their website. And I'm hearing this all over the radio. It's not on the website. I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, this is happening in real time. Jim's looking for the Goo Gone in the store. I'm at home on the Target website. I'm like, yeah, not sold in stores, not sold in stores, not sold in stores.
So she says, listen, there's a team member over there who might have what you're looking for. And she like winks at me and stuff. I'm like, oh, this is...
What's this, some sort of underground?
Flippin' weird. So I'm like, all right, I'll just walk over there then. And I go over there. And there's a guy, a skinny guy, and he's standing out there in the center of the aisle, and he's got the red shirt on and stuff. And I'm like, oh, God, this guy's looking for me, isn't he? He's looking for me. And sure enough, I come into plain sight, and there it is. Are you the Goo Gone Guy?
Oh, this is what you were trying to avoid.
And I don't
this
want
whole
to be
time.
the Goo Gone Guy. I am not the Goo Gone Guy. What do you have? And so he gave me this thing, Duck Brand Adhesive Cleaner. Yes, I will be the Duck Brand Adhesive Cleaner guy. I am not Goo Gone. Oh, by the way, this week's Rebel Force Radio is brought to you by the fine folks at Goo Gone. No, it is not. It is not. But so Goo Gone. So I'm the Goo Gone guy now. And I came home and I experimented with this this Duck Brand adhesive remover, which Billy Mack says, hey, that looks like the same stuff. And it actually did work. I had some pretty good success. I didn't rip the card. I did make a huge mistake, a couple of mistakes. Number one, I applied way too much. It sort of spilled out. So it like puddled on the card, and I tried to wipe it off, and it wouldn't go, So there's a few little drop marks there on the silver piping on the border. And also when I fully had removed the sticker, there was a little bit of residue there, and I scratched off some of it, and then I made a huge mistake and wiped it with a paper towel. And the paper towel made like these whitish spots on there, which I can't remove, but it's very faint. It's very light. I do recommend checking out an adhesive cleaner at Target. They have the Duck Brand. Elsewhere, you might find your Goo Gone. Or just send emails to me because I am the Goo Gone Guy, so I can talk you through this process. I could hold your hand through all your goo needs. So if you need...
I love that movie.
Goo needs.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. The great Sean Astin and Goo Needs.
Short Round was in that, too. I love Short Round.
That's right, Short Round. But here's the thing. This is what's great about it. And you had much better success than I did. Because those card backs are designed to have a distressed look. So the idea is that you were a collector, you were very disciplined, you kept your figures from 1978, but you were a little bit lazy about it, and they were kind of beat up around the edges. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you have a little bit of distress on the Tarkin image, it's okay. It actually works with the whole vibe of the design.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's fine.
Thank you.
Much better than mine. Mine's going back to the store.
I might even try again, though. I might try one more.
Really?
And use that as an opener.
Okay. Well, I thought about that because how cool would it be, or will it be, to have that vintage style Tarkin displayed with your vintage figures? Right. I mean, that's the figure that should have been.
Yes. Yeah. And so he belongs with the gang. And then I could just take those board games and donate them to the children's library or something. Because the game will be fully intact and unopened. Yeah.
Is it a good game, by the way? My Bailey was asking me. It's like, well, is it a fun game? Yeah. I don't know. I said I'm not old enough to know.
It's fun. It's fun. A lot of the events are determined by how you spin, but you can have dog fights and stuff, and you go through the Death Star and everything. It's fun. It's fun. It's not that great. It was clearly a rush job when it came out in 1977.
That was part of the selection of products where they took other items that they had in their catalog and just kind of rebranded them as Star Wars, right? That was
was happening with a few things like the Viewmaster or the Play-Doh or what else? There was a game called X-Wing Aces, which was actually a retooled game that I think originally the idea was you were blasting like biplanes and stuff, and now they used they just used the same cabinet and switched out the graphics and turned it into X-Wings and TIE Fighters, etc. I've never actually played that game myself. Dippin' Dots.
Demand for Star Wars. If you see the great documentary series on Netflix, The Toys That Made Us, they cover that in the Star Wars episode. Such demand for Star Wars stuff that they had to, like you said, Jim, retool some of the toys that they had on the market with just some, with the Star Wars logo on the packaging, put a sticker on the item.
But that board game was among the initial rush of merchandise to come out of Kenner.
So it was created for Star Wars.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, I see.
And that, along with jigsaw puzzles, Dippin' Dots, Play-Doh. I mean, these are things that Kenner could get out there quickly. The action figures, where they knew that was their gold mine, that took a little bit longer for them to get those action figures out on the shelves. So the figures didn't start showing up until about spring '78. So all you had were the board games and
the puzzles. And Billy Mack is a big collector of the puzzles.
Yeah, he has a few.
Yeah.
He does have a few.
Those original
And he'll
puzzles.
actually sit down. He has the patience to actually sit down and build those things.
Oh, yeah.
I
could see that.
He'll complete the whole thing.
I could see it. He's got the patience of Job, that Billy Mack.
He sure does.
He does. We have an amazing show, by the way, coming up this week here for May 31st, 2019, Rebel Force Radio. Coming up later in the program, we've got our old pal, David Sparks. We call him Max Sparky. That's how he's known online. He has an incredible review of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge coming up. This is first-person stuff. David has spent several hours over a couple of visits to Galaxy's Edge at the Anaheim Disneyland park, and you're not going to want to miss this. You're going to feel like you're there when you hear David describe step by step ride by ride, attraction by attraction, his adventures there on Batuu, as it's known.
Expect spoilers.
That is true.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler
Just warning you right now, if you don't want to know, if you want to be completely unfettered, unspoiled, and be very, very virgin with your Star Wars Galaxy's Edge experience, this is something you probably don't want to listen to. So we'll give you a heads up on that. Plus, we're going to be catching up on all of the news that was broken by Vanity Fair. We started speaking about that quite a bit last week with our pal Big Steve Glosson, and it was just awesome having Big Steve on the show last week.
Always.
He is just such a sweet teddy bear of a guy, and just so smart, so funny, and so lots of fun. But we didn't get to all of it, but we'll try to fill in the gaps. We've got headlines coming up right now.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
Now, when Lucasfilm was sold to Disney, they talked about this treasure trove of potential stories and characters, just this whole trunk, this whole canon of characters from the films and from comic books and novels and junior novels. And, of course, that included video games. And naturally, the idea of a Knights of the Old Republic, probably the most influential and popular of all the video games to come out of the Star Wars franchise, that was definitely a title that people were interested in hearing whether or not it might be fodder for a film. And according to not just BuzzFeed, but Kathleen Kennedy herself, recently cornered by the folks at MTV, had this to say about the possibility of a Knights of the Old Republic film once the rumors started to circulate. This was Kathleen Kennedy.
Knights of the Old Republic, a lot of fans want to see that. Is there any development of that?
We talk about that all the time. Yes, we are developing something to look at. Right now, I have no idea where things might fall, but we have to be careful that there is a cadence to Star Wars that doesn't start to feel like too much. We don't have a crystal ball. We tried a little bit with Solo to see if we could do 2 movies a year and whether or not there was really an opportunity for that. And we felt that's not going to work, so we backed off of that a little bit. But it doesn't mean we don't think about lots of different stories, because that's the exciting thing about this universe.
I love how they've gone from like, we looked at 2 movies a year, and that wasn't going to work, so we're going to skip 3 years and then do one every 2 years. Like, there's quite a few jumps between 2 a year and one every 2 years with a 3-year gap. I don't quite follow the train of thought, but at any rate, Kathleen Kennedy there confirming that they are developing something to look at, whatever that means. Likely a script, likely a treatment, what have you. BuzzFeed is jumping on board, saying that Lita Kalogridis of Avatar and Shutter Island fame is writing a Knights of the Old Republic film or treatment or something based on the big game from 2003. Of course, Knights of the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic 2, 2 of the most popular, maybe the most popular games in all of Star Wars video game history. And so, me personally, if I had to put money down on it, Jim, I don't know how you feel, but I would suggest that the Benioff and Weiss project is likely a Knights of the Old Republic adaptation. I think if you're going to get these guys that know medieval swordplay, why not have them basically tackle medieval Star Wars, which is Knights of the Old Republic?
No, I don't know about that, because why bring in an outside writer when you have Benioff and Weiss? They're not. Benioff and Weiss are the ones who are developing and writing a screenplay for their next trilogy. KOTOR is not. I do not see a connection between this KOTOR news and the Benioff and Weiss. That doesn't mean Benioff and Weiss aren't doing a KOTOR era film, in my opinion, which I think is 50-50 at best. I think Benioff and Weiss will be taking Star Wars into the future because that is what Disney has been developing at this time.
Really? So you see the Benioff and Weiss project as being something that happens post-Sequel Trilogy?
Yes.
Or at least concurrent with Sequel Trilogy events?
No, not concurrent, but something in the future. And in Star Wars terms, that's a decade or two. That's how I see the Benioff and Weiss. A decade or two in the future from wherever we're left when the Rise of Skywalker ends.
Now, do you think that, look, whenever these franchises splinter off into parts unknown, 99 times out of 100, they leave a window open to, during sweeps month or whatever, if it's a TV show, they're going to do something, whether it be a little Easter egg or a cameo, something that ties back into the core of whatever the franchise is. Do you think that a Benioff and Weiss trilogy that takes place post Sequel Trilogy, but not necessarily in episode 10, 11, 12, could leave the window open for an appearance by a Poe, a Finn, a Rey, a Rose?
Sure.
You name it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Absolutely. Maybe not Rey. I think Rey is a character you would set aside for whenever they eventually do want to do 10, 11, and 12. But that could be 20 years from now.
Sure. Yeah.
So maybe the events of the Benioff and Weiss trilogy, should it happen after episode 9 on the timeline, maybe that will just inform people as to the circumstances that could then bring Rey back into the fold in her own trilogy. That would actually continue the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
Not with them calling it the Skywalker saga. It's just such a finality, It's just such a finality.
I know. Do you remember when it was just called Star Wars?
Oh,
remember those days?
Oh, yeah.
It's just Star Wars. All right. Well, speaking of Star Wars, we're going to get into it. We've got the Vanity Fair stuff that we didn't get to last week. And the writer of the big cover story of Vanity Fair, which I believe is on newsstands now, finally, the floppy copy, if you want to get it, is Lev Grossman. And Lev has some audio commentary that he's lent to his cover story. And here's some clips of Lev talking about his big scoop. Cover of Vanity Fair, photos by the great Annie Leibovitz, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker.
Hi, my name is Lev Grossman, and I wrote a story this month for Vanity Fair about Star Wars with amazing photos by Annie Leibovitz. And this is what I know about Star Wars, this is what I don't know, and there's a bunch of stuff I can't tell you. To write this article, I spent time with J.J. Abrams at Bad Robot. I also went to Star Wars Celebration in Chicago, where I spent hours of one-on-one time with most of the cast members and also most of the major figures behind the scenes.
There is a quote in the story that struck me from Daisy Ridley, the brilliant actress behind Rey, and they asked her about her acting method, if you will. She's talking about that he describes her as having those dramatic eyebrows, which she does have.
Great eyebrows.
Fantastic eyebrows.
Excellent.
For a wickedly sharp arrow of concentration, focus is a good word for Rey. I asked Ridley what she's thinking about when Rey is using her Force powers, and it turns out that Rey seems focused because Ridley is actually seriously focused. Quote, Daisy Ridley, I literally visualize it. When I was lifting rocks, I was visualizing the rocks moving. And then I was like, oh my God, I made it happen. And obviously there's loads of rocks on strings. So, no, I didn't, but I visualize that it's really going on. And that reminded me of another brilliant actor who talked about this method of acting. The great Ian McKellen, as he appeared on the Ricky Gervais series Extras. This is Ian McKellen describing the style of acting that Daisy Ridley is talking about.
How do I act so well? What I do is I pretend to be the person I'm portraying in the film or play.
Yeah.
You're confused.
No.
It's perfectly simple. Case in point, Lord of the Rings. Little Peter Jackson comes from New Zealand, says to me, Sir Ian, I want you to be Gandalf the Wizard. And I say to him, you are aware that I am not really a wizard. And he said, yes, I am aware of that. What I want you to do is to use your acting skills to portray the wizard for the duration of the film. So I said, okay. And then I said to myself, how would I do that? And this is what I did. I imagined what it would be like to be a wizard, and then I pretended and acted in that way on the day.
That's it. I mean,
that's how simple it is.
You know, either that or he was smoking some of that long bottom leaf from the Shire.
But I'm reading this quote from Daisy, and all I'm hearing is Ian McKellen the whole time.
Well, you know, I mean,
pretend to be a wizard.
She believes she's moving the rocks.
She's moving the rocks. You've got to believe it when you're doing it on screen like that. If you don't believe it, the audience isn't going to believe it.
Well, let me tell you something. That's true. And it's all about the state of mind. And somebody once told me, they were giving me advice on how to get a better workout. And they said, when you are lifting and concentrating on a certain muscle group, think in your mind about that muscle group as you're lifting the weight. So if you're doing back presses, think about your back and just concentrate on that area. And I'll be damned, you get more effective workouts when you do it that way. It's the power of the mind. And so that's what I think Daisy's trying to do in a statement like that, as opposed to be like super obvious. You know, it sounds like McKellen's being like so straightforward and obvious.
Which is what makes it funny.
I mean, he almost sounds like he's describing himself getting up from his desk to walk across the room to pour himself a cup of coffee and then walk back. I mean, when you describe something as mundane as that, he sounds like he's describing a very mundane process where it's just so matter of fact. And for a guy who has natural talent like Ian McKellen, I'm sure it is. You know, some people are just like that. I think Daisy Ridley is in that class as well. I think she's a terrific actor.
She's great. She's great. And who didn't love her after The Force Awakens? That's, you know, when I heard, the thing that bothered me so much about the criticism of those criticizing or having issues with The Last Jedi was that the people that were so outraged that there was criticism completely forgot that Rey and Finn and Poe were so universally loved after The Force Awakens. It was like, I couldn't wait. I mean, when Finn was in that coma at the end of episode 7, I wanted to, when's Finn going to wake up and be funny and be reunited with Rey and what's going on? I mean, I couldn't wait. It was such a long 2 years. Thank goodness for Rogue One, because that really helped pass the time. So certainly my issues with episode 8 didn't have anything to do with a dislike of those characters at all.
There's no dislike.
There's no dislike.
You just want some consistency.
Yeah.
And some character growth, some legitimate character growth that we could sink our teeth into. Because a lot of the stuff, it seems like, happens off screen with the sequel trilogy. A lot of people say, here's the thing about Luke that I've been grappling with lately, is people will say things like, well, nobody's the same person they were 30 years ago. But I think, and I agree with that, that's 100% true. But as a viewing audience, we need to see that progression. We can't just get it dropped in our laps and be like, that's it, suck it, you know?
Yeah, right, right.
That's, you know, it's hard to interpret that without seeing the progression. We're left with Luke Skywalker at the end of Return of the Jedi, someone who had pulled off some of the most optimistic moves for anyone fighting that war. I mean, he basically threw away his saber and said, I have faith and I will not strike down my own father. And it all, you know, it paid off for him. And so we're left with a bittersweet moment with Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi. He's reunited with his friends. They're all safe. The biggest evil in the galaxy has been destroyed. Both Sith Lords, effectively ending the rule of two. The planet-destroying weapon has been abolished, and the Empire is on the run, and Luke is on his own now. He sees the ghosts, and we assume he'll be communicating with those spirits, just as Yoda was communicating with the spirit of Ben. But it doesn't appear the dominoes fell that way. And so we're left with this Luke who shut himself off from the Force, who has given up all hope, who has turned his back on his friends and his family and the galaxy at large, who is wallowing in failure, wallowing in self-doubt, wallowing in pity. And we don't know really how we got there. There's no progression.
And there were rumors at one time about an animated series from Dave Filoni and from that team that would cover this period of time, this post Return of the Jedi, where Luke was almost like a Batman type character that swooped in and solved problems and using his Jedi powers and then swooped out before anybody knew what was happening. And it was, I thought, a great concept and could have helped sort of fill this gap in time. But you're right. I think that when you have a character as important as Luke Skywalker, someone who we've put so much stock into, several generations now have put so much stock into, that it was sort of owed to us, in a sense, if we're going to have to deal with him being this broken down, beat up, grizzled, washed up figure, that we see that evolution. And what they did show in The Last Jedi, for me, wasn't quite enough. Wasn't quite enough.
No, I mean, that's a great story, and I'm looking forward to it being told someday.
That would be great.
It's just I thought we would get and get a what again. Maybe the story will be told in Episode 9.
Hey, look at what impact the Clone Wars had on how you feel about the Anakin Obi-Wan relationship. I mean, it completely validated and filled that gap that we had, and he was a good friend. I mean, we wanted to know, because, you hear old Ben talking about what a good friend, and he gets almost choked up when he's talking about what a great friend Anakin was to him back in the days of the Clone Wars. And then you see the prequels, and, most of the time they can hardly stand each other.
Right. Anakin's flipping out, throwing things around, smack talking Obi-Wan behind his back. And then Obi-Wan's doing the same thing.
Sure is.
He's impetuous. And shut up, man.
Right.
I mean, this is the chosen one. You guys need to work together. Like we saw then eventually in that animated series.
But then, the animated series was sort of the fulfillment of that process.
Well, is that what we need? Is that what we need? An
I'm
animated
calling for
series?
it right now.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Hold on. Where's Dave? Let's call him.
Yeah, right. He's not taking our calls anymore.
No. All right, here's some more from Lev Grossman. Here we go. This is chatter about the First Order origins and the Kylo Rey relationship.
Here's what we now know about the new movie. We're going to learn more about the origin of the First Order, which is something that The Force Awakens kind of skipped over. We are going to go back in this movie and explore how we kind of got into this whole mess. Maybe the most important relationship in the new trilogy is between Kylo Ren and Rey. They are on opposite sides, but there's a personal connection between them, and it's going to run deeper than we even thought it could.
Okay.
I am all about finding out more in terms of how the First Order came to be.
Yeah.
The tease of Palpatine. Could this have its roots in Palpatine? I mean, clearly the First Order has its roots in the Empire. And no, I don't want to read a novel about it. Sorry. If it's important enough for me to have to know about it, it should be in a movie or a TV show. And I certainly don't want to read anything by Chuck Wendig in order to get a sense of the First Order origins and how it came to be. Now, I am aware that there is significant First Order origin info in some of these novels. But I'm more interested in what somebody like J.J. Abrams has to say.
Of course.
Now, as far as Kylo and Rey, what is there to say about it? I'm totally – I don't know if I've actually said this on the show. I think I have. If they end up being a couple, a romantic couple, I'm totally fine with that. I'm a hopeless romantic. I love the idea of these star-crossed lovers and forbidden love and, the light side and the dark side coming together and forming something unique and special. I love that idea. If they turn out to be clones of each other or twins or something, I'm fine with that too. As long as they have some sort of connection that makes sense and that I can relate to on some level, I'm totally fine with it. Either way, I don't care.
I'm dead set on wanting to have Rey connect to the Skywalker lineage. I'm dead set. I want that. I just... That's something I've wanted from the very, very beginning. Remember, there was that weird bit in the Last Jedi novelization about the turtle nuns from Octu who thought they were under the impression that Rey was Luke's niece. So I don't know if that's something that can legitimately be expanded upon. Like Jason, I know you don't want to read a book, but this is the novelization.
I hate
to
doing
the
that.
I know you do.
Now those turtles, was that Cuff and Link that were there on the plane?
Hey, with the turtles, and I don't sweat you. Okay.
Hey, by the way, speaking of the turtles from the Rocky movies, my wife, of course, she's a zoologist, and she gets all of these like newsletters and stuff. Did you know that the turtles from the original Rocky film, not only are they still alive, but still owned and fed and cared for by Sylvester Stallone?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those same turtles.
And they're going to be signing autographs at San Diego Comic-Con this summer. So
they're a little scratchy, but you can make them out. Cuff, Link.
Mm-hmm. There they are. So, but yeah, listen, the whole Reylo thing, whatever you want to call it. Now, that Reylo, that Daisy Ridley called that toxic. I don't know.
What?
Well,
toxic.
because there's a subculture of fans who I don't even understand. I can't even put it into words. I don't even know what's going on anymore with fans and how they appropriate these characters in fan fiction and social media chats and things like that. I that's just like way out of my I just don't get it.
Your world.
I don't get it. So I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. What I'm talking about is having these two characters become somehow romantically linked. And I think that the sequel trilogy needs a shot of romance in it. That's one thing that's been missing among many other things. That's one thing that's been missing from the sequel trilogy thus far, is a romantic connection between two characters. We also haven't...
For you, Jimmy Mac, I'm so proud of you.
Well, I think it's
admitting that there needs to be a little bit of a romance.
It's an essential.
In Star Wars.
It's an essential element. It was there in the original trilogy originally with Han, Luke, and Leia, and then Han and Leia, and then of course in the prequels with Forbidden Love, the Romeo and Juliet sequence with Anakin and Padme. You know, I love that Shakespearean stuff, and so then to have a consistency with the other two trilogies, I think it's essential that the sequel trilogy have some sort of romantic connection between two characters. We have had subtle hints of that with a few, with Finn and Rey, I believe.
Yep. Initially, yes. And they had amazing chemistry together. I mean, in Force Awakens, I totally bought them as having this sort of immediate connection with one another.
I thought Finn was motivated romantically to protect Rey, and that's what drove him to go on the rescue mission more than anything else. But then now there's a thing with him and Rose, which is another romantic connection. That's been your most obvious romantic connection because she kissed him. Right there on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the connection between Rey and Kylo. And then some people want to talk about the way Rey and Poe were looking at each other at the end of episode. Everyone wants a piece of Rey. Everyone wants a piece of Rey. But
Next you're going to tell me that 3PO and R2 had a thing. Come on.
No, there was that. Remember, there was that Sesame Street episode with R2 and 3PO where R2 hooked up with the fire hydrant. Everyone knows that's canon.
So that's the love of your life? R2, that's a fire hydrant. I'm telling you, that's a fire hydrant. Firemen come along, attach their hoses to it, turn it on, and water comes out. I'm not joking. Oh, R2, don't be sad. You know what they say. It's better to have loved a fire hydrant than never to have loved at all. Well, I think that's what they say.
Yeah, again,
the fire hydrant.
Romantic connection in Star Wars.
Right.
You know.
The Poe and Rey? Come on.
Well, so
would they have like 2 seconds? She's like, I'm Rey. I'm Poe.
Yeah, but
and then all of a sudden they were in love.
Fine. Full disclosure, it was my mom who pointed this out. She's like, well, I think she likes that guy at the end. So I don't. I'm just throwing it out there. That's who I heard it from. Was from my mom. So
and Papa Mac, his pick in the whole Star Wars sequel trilogy was Poe.
That was his favorite character.
Yeah.
But then when I tried to have the family screening of Episode 8, he made it through halfway, and then his pick was the sofa in the front room. That's how that broke down.
He was out of there.
Done.
He was out.
He tapped out.
Oh.
But my mom loved it. I mean, she
stuck with it.
She'll stick with it. And she'll be there. She'll be back on the show for her Rise of the Skywalker. See, I did it again. It's the Rise of Skywalker, not Rise of the Skywalker. Yeah. I kind of like Rise of the Skywalker for some reason. But
it's working?
Again, well, they didn't call me, so. But, okay, so I would like to see, I think the connection is between Rey and Kylo. And I think, it's probably one of three things. It'll be a romantic connection. They'll discover that they're related, their bloodline, or they'll both discover they're clones or creations of the midi-chlorians or something like that.
And, of course, Palpatine is going to be involved in some way. We don't know why. We don't know how. I guess we could say why, but we don't know how. But Palpatine's going to be involved. All right, so here's Lev Grossman talking about 3PO. Apparently, 3PO no longer on the sidelines. Imagine that. 3PO getting his seat in the front row.
I spoke to Anthony Daniels, who plays C-3PO, and he says that C-3PO is going to do something in this movie that will surprise us all. C-3PO has a line that includes the phrase, common emblem. Anthony Daniels mentioned this because he had a lot of trouble saying it on set. We don't know what that means, but we do know C-3PO is going to say it. Although, as I pointed out in the article, they'll almost certainly change it once we mention it.
Yeah, so C-3PO talking about, Anthony Daniels, rather, talking about his expanded role. Now, also in this Vanity Fair, where we got it? I think I've got a quote here. Anthony Daniels, the long on the sidelines character, C-3PO, steps up to act as a strong link to the original trilogy in The Rise of Skywalker. So, and once again, Anthony Daniels saying that his character surprises everybody in the new film. We've seen photos of C-3PO holding, promotional shots in that I guess it was a one-sheet, unofficial movie poster where 3PO is holding Chewie's bowcaster.
Yeah, we don't know if that was fan-created art or not, though. So.
We don't know. We don't know. But what we do know is, based on what we heard from Anthony Daniels throughout Celebration in Chicago, what we're hearing in this article is that 3PO is going to all of a sudden sort of rise up and maybe be not quite so cowardly as we've seen him in the past. That seems to be what they're alluding to. But, Jim, I, for one, am really glad to hear them talk about 3PO taking a more front and center position in this film, because what we had heard, what we had sort of grown up understanding was that, in actuality, the Star Wars saga was told through the eyes of these droids.
Yeah. And it could still finish, across the finish line with that intact, I think, as long as 3PO's there. R2's been MIA basically this entire sequel trilogy. Another thing that's missing from this trilogy is R2. Where's R2? But 3PO is there representing, and that's important. So I think, maybe are we actually going to see like an evolution of his character? We're going to see character growth from 3PO? Is that possible? I thought the only way he could achieve character growth is via programming. But it seems like he's going to be more than 3PO can be an occasional liability just because, he's not fast. I always think of Han Solo. Come on, Golden Rider, you're going to be a permanent resident. While he shuffles up the ramp to the Falcon. I mean, there are times when 3PO slows down things. So maybe he's in a situation where he can do more than just fret about space flight while he's strapping in and, actually apply himself into the war. The only time I've ever seen 3PO do anything outside of his typical programming, which of course is etiquette and protocol, and translator. He's a translator droid. Occasionally he works in these war rooms, so he has some sort of tactical programming intact, and he's proven himself to be a pilot. He's shown piloting the Queen's starship at the end of Revenge of the Sith, and he is able to drive the land speeder. So 3PO has skills.
Oh, yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they get applied here.
Right.
I mean, maybe we'll walk out of this movie considering 3PO in an entire different light. That was the type of character growth I wanted to see for Jar Jar Binks, quite honestly. I thought when we first met him at the beginning of The Phantom Menace, he was a goof, and then he would gradually grow into a general who had a sense of capability and was taken more seriously But what we saw of Jar Jar on the battlefield by the end of the film just reinforced his goofiness. I mean, it was Charlie Chaplin, it was wackiness, it was a series of misadventures and slapstick that happened to benefit the cause. His clumsiness.
Miso don't have a boomba!
But I think that's the best way to describe Jar Jar. I mean, he can grow up, but he'll always be clumsy.
I got to tell you, there's nothing that makes my 6-year-old belly laugh like that battle on Naboo with Jar Jar. Oh, my gosh. Wow. And the Boombas and him running down the hill away from the Boombas, which is a direct lift from the Three Stooges short when they're running away from the beer barrels.
Oh, yeah, it sure feels like it.
Yeah. But, I mean, he just – and then when he's grabbing on to the cannon on the tank – oh my God, Parker loves that.
Awesome.
Loves that.
There's been a lot of talk about the Phantom Menace aging well.
Yeah.
If you listen to me, I've been talking about it for like the last 12 years, but it's catching up with mainstream now. And, the Phantom Menace, I've always felt, was a real achievement in cinema, filmmaking, and, something that kids would really be able to sink their teeth into also. So, little kids.
Well, my 6-year-old loves it. Hey, we're going to get to more of the Vanity Fair next week, but before we leave and get into our big exclusive with Max Sparky and talking about the passing of Peter Mayhew, Chewbacca, his furry co-pilot.
I'm sure you've already discussed this, but it was kind of sad. Peter Mayhew is passed. Chewbacca. Yeah. You've known him for probably 30 years, I guess?
Yeah.
What was he like?
He was a really sweet man.
Yeah.
Nice man. And he had a hard time physically. It was really hard for him to do what he did for us, what he did for all of us. And he did it with real dignity and class. He was a really neat guy.
Yeah.
Miss him.
I usually want to be happy when you're here and make jokes. That's my job. So I thank you for saying something nice.
Well, get on with it.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to love Harrison Ford. But there's a lot of emotion, Jim, in his voice there. I think that, I'm sure these aren't guys that talk to each other every day. I'm sure that there weren't, constant text messages going on. But I'm also positive that if Peter Mayhew needed a helicopter pilot at any point in his life, he could have picked up the phone and called one Harrison Ford. Yeah. I think there was definitely a bond there. And I think Harrison Ford is the type of guy that's going to be loyal to someone like Peter Mayhew, who is much like the character that he portrayed, totally loyal, totally honest, is who he is. And I think that's somebody that Harrison Ford would really respect. And it sounds like he did.
Yeah, it sure does. And it surprised me to hear the emotion in Harrison's voice as he was talking about Peter and paying his respect, because that's what Harrison was doing right there. He was paying obvious respect to Peter. He respects Peter a great deal because there's no way Harrison would ever get into that dog costume. I mean, he would. Right. Instead of just be like, who would do that? He saw Peter doing it, and it earned his respect, it sounded like. And also, Peter represents a presence that was in Harrison's life at a very specific time, a huge time for Harrison, and a time that also represents his youth. And so I think Harrison, looking back on that and thinking about the fragility of life, if the Wookiee's gone down, that's what does that mean? I mean, what does that mean for the rest of us? So
you're staring at your own mortality. And by the way, I know I sound like the biggest fanboy in the world for The Force Awakens, and it partially because I am. But the film does so many things right, and one of the things it does so well is get that relationship between Han and Chewie. Mm-hmm. It just gets it right. That the one line that kills me, makes me laugh out loud every single time, is when he's like, "I'll just talk myself out of it," and Chewie lets out a little growl, and he's like, "Yes, I do every time." That or that one, and oh, you're cold. You know, just the kind of chemistry, you know, that only the best can share like that. And I love it. I just love it. I think that's one of the reasons why I love that movie so much, is because it really gets the Han and Chewie relationship right.
And Han is Han in that movie. Han is Han. And I've heard Mark Hamill actually, you know, point that out. Han got to be Han.
Yeah.
Feeling, you know, in the context of, why didn't Mark get to be Luke?
Right. Yes. It's a great point. And not only does Han get to be Han, but Mark sometimes gets to be Han, because Mark Hamill, as we know, does a incredible, I'll say the second best Harrison Ford impression. First best goes to Jimmy Mack. I don't think anyone does grizzled old Harrison Ford quite like Jimmy Mack.
Hamill does a pretty good job. The thing I got on Hamill, though, is
$5 million.
Well, that's what he's got on me. The kid's got a lot of money, but you know, Harrison is from the north suburbs of Chicago, and so am I. So
yes,
I think there's something in the water.
A lot of people don't remember. They think of Harrison Ford, you know, as this movie star. Like, he's always been in California, but he's a Chicago guy.
That's right.
It's crazy.
Went to
do you ever hear him? Does he still have roots there? Like, does he still have family in the Chicago area?
You know, I've been on the run from Kanji Club for so long. I haven't been able to connect with the folks back home. This is unfortunate, but the gang at Maine East High School.
Is that where it is? Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's too cold.
He's not going anywhere near that. So
Callista hates the cold.
Callista. So Mark was brought up on this interview on Jimmy Fallon with Harrison Ford, and Jimmy talks about the great impression that Mark Hamill does of Harrison and what he thinks of it.
Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill was on our friend Seth Meyers' show not too long ago, and he did an impression of you. I don't know if you've seen that. Maybe you'd like to take a look at this. Here's Mark Hamill's impression of Harrison Ford. Take a look at this.
I'm looking in continuity, and I said, well, wait a second. This is right after we got out of the trash compactor. Shouldn't my hair be all wet and matted with schmutz all through it? And he turns to me and says, hey, kid, it ain't that kind of movie. If people are looking at your hair, we're all in big trouble.
No. That wasn't bad, huh?
He can have the job. No, it's really good.
Yeah, it's not bad, right?
I guess that's me.
that is you, yeah.
He knows. He said that. Oh, man, that is so great. That's so great. That's the kind of stuff I just live for. I love that. And I'll always cherish the quotes about Peter Mayhew coming from Harrison Ford. And yeah, it's hard to see your heroes, you know, get older and pass on. And it's I'm just, you know, despite all of the grievances and issues that I've had from time to time with these sequel films, there's going to be a big part of me that's always going to be glad that we had them and had the opportunity to spend more time with these characters because they're so special to us. Now, someone else that is special to both of us is your wife, the great Wendy Snyder, Chicago radio legend. And I think she's going to get into that legend status. I mean, to have a career in radio, first of all, to have a career in radio is rare. Then to have a long-standing career is even more rare, and in the same market is just insanely rare. And a market as competitive as Chicago. And to be at the heralded WGN studios, a legacy radio station. That's a big deal.
No, it is
a big
great.
deal.
No, it is great.
Yeah. So she is a legend, and I don't mean that in an old lady kind of way. I mean that I know what you're thinking. I'm married to a legend, or as you would talk. You interviewed Mickey Rooney, and didn't he talk about a legend?
Yes, he said a legend is a guy looking for a job. I know. I love Mickey. That guy was nuts.
The Mick. He was doing Wizard of Oz back then.
He was. Yeah.
But anyway, so Wendy Snyder gets to interview all these great personalities coming through the WGN studios. Apparently, she had on none other than Kate Mulgrew. That's right.
Yes.
The captain.
Yes.
Captain Janeway. And, great actress, Tony-winning actress. And I am so blown away by the fact, and I'm just going to jump to conclusions here and assume that I may have had something to do with one of the questions that Wendy asked of Kate Mulgrew.
Oh, yes.
So did you know in advance that Kate was coming on Wendy's show, and did you plant this seed?
No.
How did this go on? No?
I didn't know. I didn't know Kate was going to be on the show, but I was listening.
Okay.
Yeah, I was listening to the show, and she said Kate Mulgrew's coming on. And so I said, well, holy crap, that's the one that Swank was saying should play General Leia. So I sent Wendy a text. Let's do one of those classic things where I pull up my text and I'll read you exactly what I wrote, because I
have long said that Kate Mulgrew should, if Lucasfilm / Disney was ever going to recast the role of General Leia, I thought that Kate Mulgrew would be a great choice to pick up the mantle.
And oftentimes over the years, when I've seen my opening during a Wendy Snyder interview on WGN, I've dropped Star Wars knowledge at her feet. And almost all the time, she will bring it up into the conversation. And sometimes the people she's interviewing, they'll be so shocked that she had this information. Oftentimes she'll throw the Star Wars fan husband right under the bus, too, at that moment, too.
Right.
Yeah, he's a fan. Oh, it's one of those. But I'm looking here. I'm trying to talk here and scroll. And here it is. So she's talking to Kate on the air, and I send Wendy this text. After Carrie passed away, some fans, a.k.a. Swank, I didn't put that in the text,
but
I said some fans thought Kate would be a great candidate to play Leia if Disney were to recast the role, until they announced they were not going to get another actor. Did she know this? Would she have accepted the gig if offered? So they were talking a lot about Kate's book called How to Forget a Daughter's Memoir, and they were talking about Orange is the New Black. Kate plays a character. I don't watch Orange is the New Black. I know Wendy does. And so it sounds like Kate plays a character with a sort of thick European, Russian sort of accent. But sure enough, Wendy asked. It got in. It got through. She asked Kate Mulgrew the $1 million question.
After Carrie Fisher passed away, some fans thought that you would make a good General Leia in the upcoming Star Wars films, but then they decided not to go with that. Were you aware of that? Would you have taken that role?
I was completely unaware
Really?
of that. But I'm unaware of all of it. I mean, I love it when I hear these things. No, I was not aware of that.
Would you have taken it?
Probably.
That's
a very different kettle of fish. You're talking about Star Wars versus Star Trek.
Right. Sure.
I am a Star Trek captain.
Yeah.
Can't they intertwine?
They don't. That's you're going to get feedback.
No,
Look at the lights.
I am married to a Star Wars fan, so I know that's.
Well, then, and so he should be allegiant to his
I kind of like
base.
them both.
You do like them both?
Yeah.
You can like them both. You don't think so? You don't think you can?
Well, I'm a Star Trek captain.
Right. We're asking the wrong person.
Don't push the wrong button. Oh, wait, I just became red. What's going on here?
Be careful.
So she started doing the voice from her Orange is the New Black character.
Oh, my God. Well, how could that's so cool. I mean, that's awesome of you and of Wendy because, that's sort of been, I'm not the only one that ever thought that. Now, I have to say that I was not aware prior to my throwing that out there on the show many years ago, or a couple years ago. I was not aware of anyone else with that idea. She just hit me as kind of having that sort of gravitas and the look and, could potentially do the whole voice. I just thought she would be great. And so for you to throw that out there at Wendy and then for Wendy to see that Taxon actually asked the actress herself.
So that's Kate Mulgrew. She came through Chicago, and we had to ask her about playing General Leia. So she had not heard about it up until that point, but now she knows. Now she knows. She probably at least left that interview, went back to her hotel room, and stared in front of that mirror and said, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope." See, you know what? That's a terrible Kate Mulgrew impersonation, too. I mean, her voice is just that iconic Janeway voice. It is Katharine Hepburn, but I think of Janeway. I really did enjoy that show when it was on the air.
Yes.
And Kate Mulgrew was amazing as a captain on that show.
She was incredible. And then Barack Obama as the first officer and later became president. It was just incredible.
Tuvok.
To go from Tuvok to Barack. Incredible. Incredible.
There was a creepy resemblance between those two guys.
there really
it made
was.
you wonder. It made you wonder. It's like, all of a sudden, like, Barack shows up and he to do like the State of the Union address, and he forgot to take the pointy ears off.
Yeah,
and it's like, busted! We knew it. You never see Barack and Tuvok in the same room together.
Not at the same time.
This is Carrie Fisher.
Hey, Jake Lloyd here.
Hello, this is Warwick Davis, and you're listening to Rebel Force Radio.
Now this is podcasting.
This is Anthony Daniels, and they asked me to throw in an ad-lib, but they didn't throw in any money, so I'm not going to throw in anything else. Goodbye.
Hey, it's James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I must tell you, the source for the Force is Rebel Force Radio, your source for the Force.
Hey, it's Mark Hamill, that Skywalker guy from those space movies.
Rebel Force Radio, what an unfortunate moniker.
Force yourself to listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, George Lucas.
It's Star Tours on steroids at a level you can't possibly believe. Now the technology is here. This thing is amazing. It's really something that you couldn't even dream about 20 years ago. I hope you enjoy it. It was a great experience for me, and I think that you'll change your life. Thank you.
Thanks, George. And now I'd like to introduce a man who won our hearts as the charming rogue Lando Calrissian, Billy D. Williams.
As you probably know, I was the original owner of the Millennium Falcon. It's amazing to see her looking so good today. And I'm so excited for you. You're going to get the pilot, the Falcon 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill.
The last time I was in a Disney park with George Lucas was for the opening many moons ago of Star Tours. And I thought to myself, this is inconceivable that I could be part of a movie that would get its own ride in a Disney theme park? I mean, I better savor the moment because it'll never be surpassed. And yet, look at where we are today. We get our own land. Okay, Troy. Let's fire up the Falcon.
This is just a little embarrassing. Is there somebody who knows how to fix this thing?
She may not look like much,
but she's got it where it counts.
Ladies and gentlemen, Harrison Ford. All right. Can you help us out with this thing?
I'll give it a try, Bob. Peter. This one's for you.
All right, those were the sounds that you heard coming out of the opening ceremonies of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Probably the biggest attraction to hit Disneyland parks probably since the opening of the park itself. And it's a huge deal. Those of us that have been fans from the beginning, we have long dreamed of the day that we could step inside the world of Star Wars. And George himself often rumored to be thinking about a Star Wars amusement park. There was rumors of a Dubai park before the big sale to Disney. But you know what? It really was going to take a company like Disney to actually translate Star Wars from the film to an amusement park. I mean, they did it with Star Tours 1, Star Tours 2. So here you have it. And what a great big celebration they had there in Anaheim. Now, we have our own stringer who has visited Star Wars Galaxy's Edge not once, but twice already for multiple hours. We've had him on the show previously, a good friend of ours at Rebel Force Radio. He is one of the most prolific bloggers, podcasters when it comes to the worlds of productivity and Apple software and hardware. He is known as Mac Sparky online. He is an attorney out of Orange County, California, and a great guy and a great big Star Wars fan. Our pal, Mr. David Sparks, joining us here to talk about Galaxy's Edge.
I have been to Batuu.
You have. And it is marvelous.
Oh, my God. You guys don't know what you're in for. I don't even know if I can properly verbalize it. I've been there 10 hours. I've been on the Falcon 9 times. Oh, I got so much to share with you.
9 times. Well, that's why you're here, man. That is why you're here. So let's talk about it, because I know that people are going to be wondering, well, where are the photos? And if they're checking out the website over at MacSparky.com or checking you out on social media, they're going to be wondering where the photos are. But we should explain to everyone that the 2 times that you were there, you were under an embargo. There was no photos. In fact, they were locking the phones up, right?
Imperial security was tight, is all I'm going to say. They not only do they make you bag your phone as you go in a sealable bag, they check the bag as you leave to make sure it stayed sealed.
Wow. Man, oh man. So is there a reason you think why they went to these lengths? Why wouldn't they have wanted the press or members of the media or friends of the media or what have you to be able to go out there and publicize this stuff? Was it that big of do you think it was that big of a wild card, that big of an unknown?
I think that they wanted, number one is they've been letting some folks in while the thing was still being finished. I mean, there were changes between the first and the second time I went. And I think they want, the embargo is lifted on Wednesday of this week at 6 p.m. Pacific. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you're going to see a flood of pictures from the press and people. And, they kind of wanted, the Apple playbook,
Yeah, right.
Here it is, everybody, boom. And it's going to be everywhere.
Right. So, what can you tell us in terms of really where to begin? I mean, I know that the word that when we've spoken off the air, the word that you keep repeating over and over is immersive. And that's what everyone else is saying. So describe what you mean exactly by immersive. I mean,
sure.
People are going to compare it to Harry Potter. They're going to compare it to other, lands within the whole Disney Parks empire. So what makes this so mind-blowing?
When I was on the Rebel Force Radio last year as the man on the ground at the D23 Expo, you did an interview with me then, and I talked about how I was lucky enough to corner a bunch of Imagineers, the folks at Disney who are in charge of designing and building these things out. And I looked at Harry Potter as a call of arms. It was the first time I'd gone to a non-Disney park and just been blown away by it. And so I actually was asking them about it then. I talked about it when I was on your show last year. I said, look, guys, what are you going to do? I mean, how are you going to respond to Harry Potter? And they're like, hey, if you like Harry Potter, this is going to be, Harry Potter's nothing compared to this. I mean, it was like fighting words for them. I think that was the term I used at the time.
Yeah.
And then you've got all these guys who are, I'm 50. You've got all these guys about my age that have risen in the ranks through Disney Imagineering. They're out there at a point, they've got some authority. Someone gave them a big checkbook and said, make Star Wars. And man, they did it. Yeah. I mean, this is you go in Disneyland, and if you go, I grew up going to Disneyland. I'm from Southern California. I was a Jungle Cruise skipper for years. I've been an annual pass holder since my kids were babies, and now one of them's in college. So I spend a lot of time at Disneyland. And you go in Disneyland, and you know that you're in Tomorrowland or Fantasyland, but you also know you're in Disneyland. That's like the overarching thing. I'm in Disneyland, but I'm in the Fantasyland area. When you go to Batuu, you're in Batuu. You're not in Disneyland anymore. I mean, when you leave Batuu and you see popcorn stands and, people selling balloons, it's jarring. It's like, what just happened?
Well, I mean,
if I could compare it to anything just that I've experienced, obviously Universal has their Harry Potter experience. Yeah. And then just across the parking lot from Disneyland at California Adventure, when you walk into that Cars Land, to me, that has always been the most immersive thing I've ever experienced. It must have just been the focus I had that day. I don't know what it was, but I really felt like I was there at Radiator Springs with Lightning McQueen and the gang. I mean, I really did. That was the most immersive thing I ever experienced. So you would definitely say it's on that level, if not higher.
Jimmy, it's higher. It's a warm-up. That is a warm-up to this. Let me just tell you my first walk-in, okay? They've got 3 entrances, and I walked in through the Rebel gate. They've got, different areas you walk in. And when you go into the Rebel, it's like out in the woods kind of. It's kind of got a bit of an indoor feel. I mean, one of the things they did, by the way, this is no recognizable planet. It's not something from one of the movies. They just made their own little corner of the Star Wars universe, which I think in hindsight was the right move.
Yeah.
But as you're walking in, you notice, moisture evaporators are around, You'll see some Rebel graffiti on top of some First Order signs. And then I get to an area, and right there, life-size Poe Dameron's X-Wing. Just sitting there. Just sitting there on the board. And then across from that, out from nowhere, from the woods practically, comes Chewbacca, right? Chewbacca just walks out. Of course, the first thing I do is give him a hug, because how do you not hug that Wookiee, right?
You got to. You got to.
But he's busy. I mean, he hugs me, but he's like, he's gesturing at the X-Wing. I don't know what the heck's going on, right? So he has a friend with him, some, rebel or a rebellion mechanic, I guess. And they go over and they go into where the X-Wing is landed. And they open a toolbox, and Chewie pulls some tools out. And he starts working on the X-Wing. He's fixing it, right? And so a group of us are standing around watching him fix it, and he's getting frustrated. It's making all sorts of weird noises,
So this is like right out of Empire when he's working on the Falcon, right?
Yeah, man. He's up there, and he's growling. He's getting mad. At one point, he bumped his head on it, and he's angry. And then he's like connecting stuff, and then suddenly he gets it all together. And it winds up. You hear the noise of this ship powering up. The lights dim. Everybody is like freaking out. We're all like raising our hands. We're like, "Yeah, Chewie, you did it!" And Chewie's looking at us. He's raising his hands, and then like 30 seconds later, it just powers down again, and he like growls and he starts banging on it with his tools. He's so mad. I mean, that was my introduction to Batuu, guys.
Sounds surreal. It sounds surreal. So. All right, let's walk with you in there. It looks like I'm looking at a map here. So it looks like you entered from the Critter Country area, that's where you came from, that side.
Yeah.
Find Poe Dameron's X-Wing. So that's it right on the border. So you've already had one mind-blowing experience, and you've really barely set foot into the Galaxy's Edge itself.
No, exactly. And it's so cool because like everything makes sense to the universe. This is why you feel like you're no longer in Disneyland. There's moisture evaporators there. One thing I'll never understand about Star Wars is I thought moisture evaporators were on desert planets, but watching the latest movies, they're everywhere. So I guess that's okay.
They are everywhere.
It's this outpost amongst all these massive, alien, huge petrified trees, and they're everywhere. These posts. I was just thinking last night as I was in there, my daughter actually had the idea. She said, Dad, wouldn't it be cool if you looked up in these spires and somewhere up there you just saw Ahsoka crouched with her lightsaber looking down on us? I got chills.
It's firmly entrenched in sequel era aesthetic and vibe, right? You don't you wouldn't see Tarkin walking around. That would not work with the vibe. It's all First Order stormtroopers. You don't see original trilogy stormtroopers there. And is there other characters? Is there an old Luke there? Is a grumpy old Luke there?
No.
Leave me alone.
If there was, I'd have a long talk with him. Let me just put it that way.
He's at the entrance just yelling at everybody. They walk in, leave this place.
Yeah, exactly. But the interesting thing is, even though it's kind of set in the sequel trilogy, there's something in there for everyone. I mean, like I was just walking down the street in Batuu, and there's a little caged cabinet on the side, and I walked over with a friend of mine. I'm looking inside of it, and there's a bunch of weapons and helmets and stuff. It was Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi stuff. There was the forest helmets, and there were some binoculars from the snow, and and it was like a rebel cache, of weapons. And my friend and I are just looking at just losing our minds because all this stuff is just in there. And an employee, a Batuu citizen, walks up to us, and she's like, "Hey," she's like, "You know what all this junk is?" I'm like, "Are you kidding? This is artifacts, man. This is stuff from the rebellion." I'm fully in character at this point, right? And she's like,
"These are original props from Star Wars Episode 4: New Hope."
No, I was the different angle, man.
1977 from 20th Century Fox, production.
I was living there, man. I was like, "This is from the rebellion, man. This is when we beat the man," And she's like, "Yeah, it's just junk." I said, "Well, then I'll take it off your hands." She's like, "Well, let me see your credits."
We're gonna see. All right, how long can we keep this crazy train going? All right,
exactly.
I got credits. Let's really test these actors.
Yeah, really. I like that. And you're saying be sure to check your comic book store guy persona at the door. Don't take anything early that goes on in this place.
Well, look, I guess the way I look at it is, I'm of the age where, I saw the original Star Wars in the theater when I was under 10 years old and lost my mind over it. I've been waiting all these years to go live in Star Wars, and I'm not going to go at it from a nerd, perspective. I'm going to go at it from that 10-year-old that wanted to live there, and I'm just going to play the role, baby. And And if you do it, I mean, when you go to buy something, they ask for your credit chip. They want your credits. They really have gone out of their way to allow some nerd like me to have a great time in there. And so why not do it?
Awesome. And how much time before? Because we want to talk about the Falcon Ride, because you wrote it 9 times and did different capacities.
You wrote it 9 times.
9 times, baby.
Oh, man. That's unbelievable. You wrote it 9 times.
Yeah.
We've wrote it a combined none.
Between the two of us.
Between the two of us. And you've done this 9 times. I almost want to book my flight tomorrow.
That's 9 less than me.
So, all right. So if you're thinking about this, all right. So you've got places to eat, right? You've got the actual cantina, which you have not. At least last time we spoke, you hadn't made it into yet.
Yeah, I haven't gotten the canteen yet because the stuff I've been doing has been kind of like the previews for the people that work so hard on it. And I feel like all of them, this is my take, a lot of them, at this point, they've been working so hard, they just want to go drink.
I see. That's where they are. All the Imagineers are inside the cantina.
The line is very long, and at this point, I just want to kind of absorb the whole thing before I start getting to that part. But I will get there.
But you did say you had a Ronto burger, so there are other places to eat. I mean, is it just like an open fire pit? You just go and grab a chunk off the Ronto?
It's better than that, man. It's an open pit with a pod racer engine suspended from the ceiling that is blasting down at this this beef.
Oh, come on! Are you kidding me?
I'm totally
You can't
serious.
make this up.
And when the engine lights up, and there's a droid like cranking a wheel, and the droid talks like Smeagol. He's completely pissed off that he's this intelligent droid stuck spinning this wheel, and when the engine lights up, it literally shakes in its housing. It's just amazing. Man,
and that's cooking your meat. So you got the Ronto
It's not
burger.
actually cooking your meat, but
it's close enough. The idea. So you get the Ronto burger. But
So
I
you
think when
in a place to have this with all this going on, or did you take it out and like eat it outside the restaurant?
This one was an outdoor thing. Because they have a marketplace. This was in the marketplace. They also have an indoor restaurant, and like everything everywhere is amazing. One of my biggest pieces of advice, if you go to Batuu, is always look up. I mean, I didn't finish earlier when we were talking about Doc Ondor's shop.
Yeah.
The lower level has stuff that the visitors can buy, and there's cool stuff there. I mean, you got Yoda's stick there. You got holocrons. You got a little there. There's a little statue of Maz Kanata, the one that was on the spire of her bar. The one that fell down. That's just like crazy stuff there. I mean, that's a place I could spend a lot of money. Like that Rebel ring in The Last Jedi, the secret ring that Rose had with the Rebel signal. You can buy that there. It's just crazy cool stuff there. But if you look up this, it's like a 3-story circular building. And the second and third story, while you can see, you can't get up there. And that is like Easter egg heaven. I mean, there is so much stuff up there. It's like it hurts my brain to look up there because there's like, gaffy sticks, every helmet you could ever imagine. One of my favorites up there is I don't know if it's IG-88. Maybe it's one of his brothers. There's an IG-88 type droid up there. And it's just sitting there in a chair. But it's got a bunch of holes in the head, and behind it, there's about 15 blaster marks in the wall. One day it went up there to sit down and just take a look at the room, and somebody saw it and just took it out with like a blaster, and it's still there.
The blaster marks, and he's just plastered to the wall.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that was his last stop.
Definitely his last stop. That is so cool.
There's blaster marks all over that city. The combination, I mean, in terms of the immersiveness, Star Wars is always this combination of technology and ancient, and they do it super well. There's cracked, chipped concrete. The cantina looks like somebody strafed it with an X-wing. There's a bunch of big blaster marks across it. The Star Wars, I don't know if there's a name for it, but it's the door panel with the lights on it. You see it like next to every door in Star Wars.
Oh, yeah, right.
Those are all over the place.
The pill lights.
Yeah. The Imperial.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about the Falcon Ride. Can you take us through from the queue to sitting down to walking out?
Yeah. I feel like if somebody's listening to this and they don't want spoilers, I guess it's too late to tell you that. But, man.
Oh, we'll run a spoiler alert if it makes you feel better. We'll do that.
The Falcon Ride, man, just like I talked about that kid in 77 who wanted to live in Star Wars, he also wanted to drive the Falcon. And, boy, it just delivers so well. I feel like I can't even think of something negative to say. It's just so amazing. So you get in the queue, and the queue goes through a spaceship garage, So there's these massive hydraulic lifts. There's a ship there that's kind of a combination of it's a combination of it's like a massive engine cowling with like the 2 engines from Rey's speeder in Force Awakens. It's like a combination. I've never seen this ship before, but it's suspended and they're clearly working on it. And the queue kind of wraps around it, and occasionally, and there's this ongoing like audio track where you hear them talking about as they're trying to fix it and get it up and running. And then they decide to fire it up, and the lights dim and the whole room shakes as the thing starts like, trying to get going. And of course it doesn't really go. And so you kind of winds around there, but there's all kinds. I mean, it's decorated so well. I mean, there's sabacc cards there, like somebody was just playing sabacc. There's piles of tools all over the place. Like everything is rusted and beat up, and you can see dings in the walls where things, banged in it. Even like just the safety railing for the guests as they walk through, it's all shredded and mangled, and the paint is chipping on it. It's like everything just fits. So you go through this massive room, which is the first part of the queue. And actually, I take that back. The first part of the queue is on the ground that walks behind the Falcon. So you get this amazing view of the underside of the Falcon. And then after you go through the garage, you go through kind of the second level of that first queue, and you have a look down at the back of the Falcon. And
now that's cool. So they're giving you these amazing photo ops of the Falcon. And you had said to me at one point, David, you're like, that there was a moment where you were standing there on that balcony and you're like, oh my God, I'm standing here looking at the Falcon.
Yeah, I should have said that before even getting in the queue. When the first time, because the Falcon sneaks up on you, you walk out of Doc Ondor's shop, you hang a right, and all of a sudden you're just standing on this balcony that overlooks the Millennium Falcon. And I was talking about the life-size X-Wing, the life-size Falcon, guys. Yeah. It is crazy how big that ship is, Yeah. And then you go and you can stand right next to it and you're looking up at it. And, I got goosebumps. I mean,
Did you run your fingers across it on the underbelly?
I wasn't allowed to touch it. I don't know if we ever will be able to, but if I could have, I would have. But look, we're family right here.
Yes.
Rebel Force Radio. I was teary. I wasn't like bawling like a baby, but I was just like, this is something I don't know. Star Wars touches me. I don't know what to say, man.
But it interests me. You say you can't actually come into physical contact with the ship at all. Is that even the same case for the front? It appears you walk up to it.
I don't know. In the way it was set up when I was there, you could not, and I don't know if you ever will be able to. But you get very close to it, and it's big, man. This thing is a massive ship. I'm not sure I could even reach up to run my hands along it.
Yeah.
I just cannot understate the size of this thing. But anyway, so the queue kind of wraps around it, so you get great views of every angle of it, and then eventually you get in, and they kind of group you off. The ideal size for a Falcon crew is 6. So if you have 6 friends, that's the best experience, I think. But if not, they'll group you with some other people. And eventually they shuttle you into this room, and there's a bunch of like cargo crates everywhere. There's some droids. There's a figure up on a platform, but you can't see. You can just see his back. He has a cape on and a hat. And then he turns around, and then you hear the dulcet tones of Jim Cummings. Hello, my friends. And it's Hondo, and it looks so real. And he's like trying to manage like 4 things at once. He's getting radio calls, and things are breaking. And so Hondo is like ever present on this attraction. And I did it multiple times on the ride, and the things he said differed. So I'm glad it's not like the same every time. Like at one point, he got in a fight with his droid. He started talking about how he owned his own company, so he didn't have to take orders from droids, and he's like mad at his droid. It's just like weird stuff. But but he's telling you.
Sounds like he's things haven't really gone his way. It sounds like.
He's got his own shipping company, and he needs pilots because he's got a lot of stuff to do. And
is it revealed why he's in possession of the Falcon?
Yes, I was worried about that because as a nerd, I'm like, no, only Chewie can share the Falcon, not Hondo, right? as he's talking, the you can see behind him, because he's got a window from this vantage point, the Falcon comes in for a landing, and then he gets Chewie on, and it turns out that there is this cargo on Corellia. It's I forget the name of the actual thing that we're trying to get, but there's something that he decides we need to steal.
Was it a puffer pig?
No.
Okay.
No. I think it's fuel rods. I think it might be the stuff from the Solo movie, but I forget what it was now. But anyway, so the rebellion needs them. So Chewie shows up, and Chewie's super angry by video. He's not in the room. And Chewie and Hondo are going back and forth. And Hondo's like, hey, just let me send these guys to get that stuff. We'll give the first shipment to the rebellion, and then I'll take the rest, and we can help the rebellion out. And Chewie's not really clearly on board with it, but he sounds kind of resigned. and then the radio cuts off, and Hondo's like, okay, you need to go right now before he changes his mind. So go,
Yeah.
And then, you leave the room. And they break you up in your groups. When you get into the room, you're still clearly in space dock. And, like I said, this queue I've really understated, but everything has that look to it. Like there's big panels and, conduit on the walls. It looks like some of them have been leaking oil. They've been there for 100 years, you think. And you get a card. They have these wooden cards they give out to everyone. And usually they're face up. And if you turn it face down, it sees what your assignment is. There's 3 assignments: pilot, engineer, or gunner. And there's 2 of each in a crew of 6. So
no matter what I get, it really doesn't, because it'll just go to the kids. Oh, look, I got pilot. Yes, I'm pilot. Oh, I guess I'm not. Here you go.
Yeah.
In cards. That's how
you can swap.
That's how it goes, parents. You'll never sit in that pilot seat. Those little ankle biters at your side.
So once you get your card, then they say, okay, well, here it is. Now get on the ship. So you walk down, you walk through a hatch, and you are clearly on the Falcon. The white kind of foamy walls.
You walk through the hatch, so you don't go up the ramp.
No, you don't go up the ramp.
See, a hatch.
Yeah.
So describe this hatch.
It's not. I mean, you have to look for it, but you clearly transition from spaceship, space station to Falcon in one step. And the Falcon is beat up. I mean, when you get it, you walk through a tunnel and you get into, I guess, what I would call the common room of the Falcon. In it, you've got the chest. You've got the chest table. Yep. The med bay, the wall where they have their first kiss, in episode 5.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a porg nest inside one of the walls. You see
Han's computer terminal is there where he sits, and
yeah, exactly. They've got the you can see the blast shield helmet with the training.
Oh yes, now there's some OT.
Some
OT.
Well, that was also
that's right.
The training remote showed up in
Force Awakens. Yeah,
in the Force Awakens.
I mean, and the room is larger than it ever appears in the movies, because what they do is they feed multiple crews in there at once. So there's like somewhere between 2 and 6 crews in there. And the cards they give you have colors, so you'll be the red crew, the blue crew, the purple crew. So at some point they'll say, hey, purple crew, you're up, so you get a little bit of time to goof off in there and just kind of check the room out.
Yeah.
And then when it's your turn, they call your crew and then they line you up. Pilots in the front, gunners in the middle, engineers in back. And they give you very brief instruction. And once again, it's all in character. They're like, hey, have you guys ever flown before? And some of them, like one of them I said, he says nobody had flown before. It's like my first one. He's like, oh, you guys are going to die. And then, and then they give you basic instruction. And then they say, well, Hondo's waiting. Get on your mission. Everything is about Hondo. Everybody's stressed out about Hondo, right? And then they send you down one hallway. You take a left turn, just like you imagine you would.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's another little section you're waiting in. Hondo comes on the screen again. And once again, he says different things. Heard him the funniest one I remember was he's like, hey, And just be careful because safety is job one at Anaka Enterprises. Well, actually, profit is number one, but safety's close, you know?
Yes.
Exactly.
Brand new flight crew. Good luck to you all. You might need it. Today's flight takes you to the planet Corellia. You will be intercepting a first-order train shipment of coaxium. Gunners, you clear the path. Pilots, line up behind the train. And engineers, you harpoon that precious cargo. All right, into the cockpit. I hope you are ready, my friends.
As soon as he's finished his little spiel, the door slides open, and brothers, you look in at the cockpit of the Falcon. And like, I'm goosebumps right now just telling you about it. I can't tell you what you're going to feel like when you look down that doorway. You walk in.
You're there.
You are there. You are there. I mean, it is not, I'd say, I'm sure the nerds will find differences between it and the movies. This is a cockpit that has to have people in it, every 10 minutes.
Check your comic book store guy mentality.
Yes.
It is close enough because it feels real to me, baby. And so you go in and you get seated, and the pilot is on the front left. The co-pilot, of course, is on the front right. And then behind that are 2 gunner seats and 2 engineer seats. And let me just kind of talk through what happens. When you get in there, they want you to strap in, of course, seatbelt, all that. But they're like, hey, you need to start up your station. And you've got all these buttons. Wherever you're sitting, there's just like a ton of buttons. And one will flash for you. And you press the button, and you hear, boo, you hear the noise. It rumbles through the cockpit. Like, holy, you know what? I just started up the Falcon, and it doesn't matter what seat you're in. You get different noises, but it's still like this feeling you get. And the whole panel lights up when you push the button, it's like, this is real,
now, who has to stand up and then, smack the thing with his fist to really get it to start?
Man, I wanted to do that so bad. I could tell you, I have a funny story about it. If you want, I'll share something like that. But at one point, I got stuck in there for like 10 minutes because a door got stuck, and I was looking all over the place. And man, it looks real. But anyway, so
if you're going to get stuck somewhere, that's not a bad place to get stuck.
No, man, I was perfectly happy. I was perfectly happy.
Yeah, take your time. Make sure it's all safe for everybody. All right, don't rush.
Yeah, but the let me just talk through the pilots because I think that is probably the hardest position. The pilot is in charge of right to left.
Okay.
And the co-pilot is in charge of up to down. So you need both a good pilot and co-pilot.
All right, Jim, which one are you going to take? Are you going to be up and down or left to right?
I'm going to be up and down.
All right. Okay.
All right. Jim made the right decision because the co-pilot also is the one who throws the hyperspace lever. The big lever you pull down.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one. Like jump to light speed.
You pulled that lever.
Oh, my God. I lost my freaking mind.
So when you pull that lever, I mean, you see the effect on the dash. I mean, it's happening
and it
right in front of you.
happen until you pull the lever.
Oh,
so that's the golden seat to get. And what is that co-pilot?
Co-pilot, front right. I lost my mind when I did that. I just started screaming like a Wookiee, I was, the first time I did it was a single rider thing. And there was a group of engineers, like 5, and so they put me in with them, and I managed to get the co-pilot seat. I didn't even know that I had that,
Wow.
And then it lights up, and they're like, "Hey, co-pilot, jump to light speed," and I'm like, I pull the lever, and I just lost my mind. I looked around the room; they're all looking at me like, "What is this man-child?"
How do you not when you're going into hyperspace for the first time?
And then you have to do it again in the mission. And I did the exact same thing, even when I knew it was coming.
It's incredible.
The pilot hits the boosters, though, which gets you out of a couple tight situations. And so as you're flying the mission, you're doing stuff, and all of a sudden somebody's like, "Hey, pilot, you need to hit the boosters," and you see like something flashing on your panel. You slam the button down, and
what's
the ship
that flashing?
lurches on. It's great, and the gunners. The gunners have the job of, basically shooting anything that moves, tons of TIE fighters that you're going to face on the mission. And the And the engineer position is actually a lot of fun, I think, because the engineer's job is whenever something breaks on the ship, a bunch of lights light up at your station. You got to throw all the switches to put the fires out.
Right. Yeah. Fix it.
If you got a bad pilot and they start smashing into things, it blows air on you, like something is really going wrong,
Yeah. Yeah.
And at some point because this is really a train robbery. I mean, it's really what you're doing. You're going after a train and you have to harpoon carts. The engineers fire the harpoons too, which is very satisfying.
Now, I thought that was interesting when you're talking about the train heist. And is it because it sounds like it'd be reminiscent of what we saw in Solo, and you do go to Corellia for this.
Yeah, but the difference is, as opposed to Solo, is you're really you're chasing a train through tunnels. So the pilot and the co-pilot, if they aren't on the board, the ship is banging into everything.
And you had a really bad pilot, right? On one of your rides?
Yeah. I had so I had been doing it a lot, and at one point, it was the first time I went in, I had been doing the single rider because I was in there alone for several hours. And I said, well, I just want to get in the queue. I want to get in the line just to see the line, right? And so I did it. And then we got to the front, and I was following this family, and there was this lady who was kind of crazy lady. And they gave me the pilot ticket, and she was not happy about that because she's like, I don't understand why these single riders are getting the pilot. We waited in line. I'm thinking, lady, I was in line behind
He's
you
been here all day.
Yeah.
I haven't captured the Millennium, whatever this is.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, but you know what? I believe in. I'm an easygoing guy, and I'd already piloted 3 times. But I'm like, lady, would you like to trade?
Yeah, that's a let the Wookiee win situation right there.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
So I traded with her, and she was the pilot, and she was the worst pilot I've ever seen. I mean, she flew into every asteroid, rock, ship, whatever. It was a magnet for her. And but I was engineer, so I got to do a lot of work on that mission.
You were busy putting out all her fires.
When you finish the mission, Hondo gives you a report on how well you did. And he says, this is how much stuff you got, and I can sell it for this many credits. And but that you damaged the ship, and then he'll give you a list of the things that are wrong with the ship. And that's something that is context sensitive. Like when we did with the lady, it was funny because he's like, okay, let me see. Life support, damaged. Hull breach, damaged. Engineering, oh, that's not so good. And he's like, he goes through it and he's like, your raking is, we got 10% of the total profit because it was so bad. And that's the one that we got stuck on. The door wouldn't open, right?
Oh, you're stuck in there with her.
I didn't even care because her whole I felt sorry for her family because she was truly crazy. But I was able to look around really close at the cockpit, and it was very close. I really enjoyed it. No dice hanging. I was hoping there'd be dice.
No dice. No dice. Do you think some of her craziness was fueled by maybe a trip to Olga's Cantina before she jumped on board? A little bit of that. We can expect a lot of that at Galaxy's Edge. I am predicting we can expect a lot of that kind of crazy stuff going on. In the throughout the course of the ride, do you go through any original trilogy scenarios?
Not really. Well,
is it all unique? Because it sounded like
unique.
You were referencing some stuff from Solo. But, Solo doesn't jive with the sequel trilogy era necessarily.
Yeah. The mission doesn't change. It's the same mission every time. So this is the spoiler heavy part. So this is the mission. You take off from Batuu. And I think it's important that you take off from Batuu because in my mind, when I'm on that ride, the Falcon is no longer in Batuu because we just took it, and so you take off. It shows you the Batuu that you were just in. As you take off, you can see it. You're flying through those spires that are actually outside the ride. And then you get into space. You hyperspace out of there to Corellia. And then you go down into, it looks very much like Corellia as portrayed in the Solo movie. And you start chasing this train, and there's a ton of TIE fighters that come in. The gunners need to take them out. The pilots are just trying to keep it from crashing into stuff while you do it. Eventually, the train disappears down this nest of tunnels, and you chase it down the tunnels. And then the engineers need to harpoon the stuff. At one point, they harpoon the back one. We capture it, but then it pulls us down. It's kind of hard to explain, but the ship kind of crashes, and so then we all need to restart the ship, which is just awesome all over again, right? You know, you're like throwing buttons, and you hear the ship power up, and then it just gets off in time to chase the train down another tunnel. You capture some more if you're good. And then a gunship comes in, a first order gunship comes in, and then S gets real, man. And stuff, and then the gunners fire missiles at the gunship and blast it, and then things start falling in on you. The pilot's got to punch the engines to get out of there, and then the co-pilot has to hit the hyper engine to get the heck out of Corellia. And then sometimes you go straight back to Batuu, and sometimes you end up in an asteroid field. I'm not sure what the difference is. And I think it depends on how much damage your ship has taken. And then you got to pilot it in, and you land. And one of the really cool touches is, like, I did this both during the day and the nighttime, and the Batuu that's portrayed on the ride changes based on the time of day. So
amazing.
If you take off at night, it's night outside, and when you land, it's night outside. If you take off during the day, it's day. When you return, it's day outside. I mean, the realism's great. And like, even as you're exiting the ride, like that one trip we had, that bad trip I was telling you about, you can hear the engineers over the intercom as we're walking out. They're like, "Oh man, that Corellian freighter's a mess. Somebody better fix it before the Wookiee comes back." It's just like, it's just so real.
Jim,
guys.
I pictured that would be the job that I would want you and me to have, is we do the commentary on the people that just rode and what a total disaster it was. Like, geez, look at this crew.
Yeah,
look at this crew.
We could do it in real time.
Right.
We'd have a camera on them, and we would just say things about them as they walked by. Like,
look at this beauty.
And check out the stain on this loser's shirt. Have another hot dog, buddy.
Well, I mean,
how do you spell slob in Arabic? All right, but my question for you is this, because this is the swank factor coming into play. What's the motion sickness situation for people who may suffer from that kind of thing?
I think it's less than Star Tours.
Okay, good. I was going to ask you. Yeah, comparable to Star Tours, maybe a little less, not as intense.
Yeah, maybe, because you're not just, I mean, because it's interactive, you're not necessarily looking out the screen the whole time. Quite often, like the engineer job, I mean, you need to line up your shot on the train before you fire the harpoon. So you're working on your panel a lot. So sometimes you're just in a room that's shaking, and you're spending a bunch of time looking at lights and throwing switches.
Ah, okay. I think I could do that. No, I'm gonna.
Sounds like the day job.
Yeah. And even just to finish the ride, as you walk out the ride, it's equally realistic. You're walking through these tunnels, and then at some point you get transitioned to a different, like they had dug it out of a mountain, like, and there's droids everywhere. I mean, the immersiveness, I just cannot understate the immersiveness of this land. I mean, my daughter, my high school daughter, and I, we went and did the droid experience. We went to the droid factory, and outside they've got a bunch of droids out there, in various states of, decay. And they've got an Imperial probe droid, and my daughter's like, "Dad, I never realized how big they are, because it's a life-size probe droid in pieces out there." It's great. It is so great.
It sounds amazing.
Wow.
So how about any maybe hints or clues about things coming up in the Rise of Skywalker? Any indication as to, was there anything from that film or any acknowledgement of that film anywhere in the park?
Wasn't.
Nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I think they're really trying to make it. I mean, they're clearly setting it in the sequel trilogy era, but I think they're trying to make it timeless. And honestly, I'm an original trilogy guy just because I was you are what you bond with as a kid, and the original trilogy was my Star Wars growing up. And this fit right in. I mean, this thing just fits right into original trilogy. If you like, if you're a prequel, there's a lot of prequel stuff all over the place. I mean, in the droid shop, there's all these broken old Trade Federation droids in there. There's stuff. There's something for everyone as you go through this place. There's stuff in there from the animated series. It's just, everybody's going to be able to scratch their Star Wars itch here.
He said experience the sights, sounds, and smells. What do they mean by smells?
I mean, just like if you go in the room where they're firing up those jets, to cook the meat, you can smell. I didn't even talk about the marketplace. They've got this marketplace that feels right out of Jeddah to me, like crowded little stalls, wires strung everywhere.
Is that where the Kowakian monkey lizards are?
Yes. The Kowakian monkey lizards are about life size, and they can sit on your shoulder. When you get it, they give you a magnet that you put inside your shirt so it sticks to your shoulder.
Dude, you can buy these things, and they sit on your shoulder. Yeah.
And then there's a remote. I think it's air activated. It goes down your sleeve to your hand. You got a little remote in your hand, and you can turn his head left and right, and you can pull a trigger to make him open and close his mouth. And it also makes Kowakian monkey lizard sounds. So there's a bunch of people walking around with these crazy salacious crumb cousins on their shoulders.
No kidding. I've researched a lot of the merch that's going to be available in this park, and I am just hearing about this for the first time. This sounds incredible.
It's crazy.
You get a little monkey lizard. You know what? This is going to get Snyder into the park. That and the alcoholic libations.
Yeah,
that's going to finally do it for the wife. She's going in.
She's in now. Yes.
Well,
monkey lizard and booze.
They have a shop called the Creature Shop, and you go in there, and they've got like cute little like stuffed animal type Star Wars creatures, but they've also got like those big white spiders from Rebels.
Yeah, what were those called?
Oh, no kidding. That's a Macquarie design. Those big.
Yeah, but they're small. They're like 6 inches tall, but if you touch them, they start shaking. It totally creeps you out. They've got in the creature shop. In the creature shop, it's not for sale, but there's a big cage in the middle with a sleeping loth cat in it, and it's like its tail is moving. It's got a little stuffed animal that it must be playing with.
Cute.
Yeah. And
I'm burnt on loth cats.
Of course, Dave Filoni's Converse are in there.
Yeah, well, that's in the toy store. And the toy store is really cool because it's not like you're not going to see Mattel stuff in there.
Right.
It's like what if you were, I mean, the whole idea of this is you're in Star Wars. So there's not going to be 6-inch action figures of Luke there, right? What would people have in Star Wars? And all the toys we've seen in Star Wars have been very like homespun kind of things. So I sent Jason a couple pictures. Like I got an Ahsoka and a Yoda, and they're like homespun stuffed animals. I can't really. They're stuffed.
Yes, we're gonna post those up. We'll have those on our Facebook page. I'm gonna send those to Jimmy, so we can have those up when this goes live.
And there's a bunch of musical instruments in there. Like it's just all like stuff you would find in Universe. But again, always look up. If you look up, there's like homemade puppets of Darth Vader and Luke with lightsabers. Not for sale, but it looks like something that would fit in Universe. Although I would say, I noticed I was just in there last night. I was looking up, and they had Jabba's sail barge up there. And while I haven't seen the new Kenner one, the super one that Jimmy bought, I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Oh, wow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
They backed the barge there at Galaxy's Edge.
That's smart. They backed the barge. Well, that's smart because that is such a great collectible, that Hasbro sales barge.
It's not for sale. It's just like up in the shelf. Like that's just something that's there. And it's great. I mean, they've got an apparel shop that sells all sorts of like if you're the women's clothes for Star Wars are getting real between what they've done with her universe and some of these other vendors. I keep telling my wife, I say, you guys get better Star Wars clothes than we do because but they've got lots of like Rey related like apparel for men. They've got dark and light robes. They've got Jedi tunics, and they've got a lot of variety of Star Wars style belts, kind of like the Obi-Wan belt kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have the shorty robe?
You know what? I think you could probably get the shorty robe because they have the Yoda where the Yoda stuff is in Doc Ondor's, they've got some robes up there. I think one of them could work as a shorty robe for you.
Yeah, or Jim, you just take the one from the hotel.
Yeah.
Right? They have, you know,
That's all you have to do.
Right.
Sure, man.
They give those away.
It is weird that they're selling that apparel when you really aren't allowed to wear it. You know?
Yeah, right.
But they have children and adult sizes, but like you can buy an adult Jedi robe. I don't think you're going to get away with wearing it around.
So, David, final analysis: does this live up to the expectations that were set to you at D23 when we talked to you several months or a year ago?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Listen, if you're a Star Wars fan and you have the means to get there, get there. It is so worth it. I mean, the next day I woke up, I had like this Star Wars hangover. I'm like, why am I not in Batuu right now? You know?
Oh, like once you get a taste of it, that's all you want.
Yeah, it's like on Star Trek, the people who become addicted to the holodeck. I think I could become addicted to Batuu.
Yeah, it is like that, right? And so you mentioned before that you are a former Disney cast member, right?
Yeah.
What did you do there before?
I was a Jungle Cruise skipper. I shot hippos for a living.
Oh, you were that guy with the funny puns and all that stuff?
That was me, brother.
Give us a taste of just one little wacky quip that you used to spit out there on the Jungle Cruise.
Oh, you want so I could tell you dirty ones of that too.
Yeah. Well, how dirty?
Too dirty.
Okay, don't go that far. Just like
well, here's one I made up while I worked there, and I still hear occasionally from skippers now, which makes me super happy to know that my joke has lived. It's when we get to the end, I say, make sure you take your children off the boat with you. If you leave your children here, we take them to the small world, tie them to the ground, and make them sing that stupid song for the rest of their childhood. That was one of my bits. And I got in trouble for it, and skippers are still getting in trouble for telling that joke.
It's awful. Do you do it in that kind of deadpan Stephen Wright delivery of yours?
I had multiple deliveries. Like, I had a Stephen Wright one, you know, like, hey, if you fall over, then I got to do paperwork, and I hate paperwork, you know. So I had some like that. When I was there in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, and it was it was a zoo. I mean, now it's both men and women skippers. Back then it was just men. It was a fraternity. We always got in trouble. There's a unique personality to be a skipper, and a lot of people get in and hate it and can't wait to get transferred out. And for me, the whole time I was there, they're like, hey, you want to go do this other run? I'm like, no. Why would I want to go anywhere but here, you know? And we used to... I mean, exactly. I mean, you get to goof off. You can insult guests if you do it right. You can get away with it. And, you know, I used to like at night when it was before the Indiana Jones ride existed, so it would get quiet at night, and I'd let little kids drive the boat, but I would make them feel like if they made a wrong turn, we were all going to die. And I would just freak them out the whole trip. You know, we used to, because it was so quiet, we would have what they call deadheads. They'd send a boat around empty just to keep the line running. Mm-hmm. So then we'd like park under the falls and like lay on the bow of the boat like we'd been shot with an arrow, you know, as the boats would come by, you know, and the skippers would just put the light on us and say, yeah, that one didn't go so well, you know. And then we had so much fun. You know, it was a great.
So any desire to dive back in and become a cast member once again at Galaxy's Edge?
Maybe someday. I am too busy. You know, I got to feed a family, you know. I think I'd be the one that was working. They'd be like, oh, man, that guy's a nut job, because I would so get into it. I've had so many great cast experiences, though, in Batuu. I mean, they kind of auditioned people for this. They were looking for people that were willing to kind of get in character. And it's been great. You know, it's like I was standing out Doc Ondor's shop, and there's this big, like, stone foot out there. You know, it's like 9-foot long foot on top of a Star Wars crate, and the guy's like, hey, this just showed up and Doc bought it. None of us know what the heck it is, you know.
It's like being at Rancho Obi-Wan.
Yeah, and
I don't know, it just showed up, Jimmy. Open the box.
What is it? Oh God.
And there's all this Arabish on the case, and I'm telling the guy, I'm like, hey, next time I come, I want to know my Arabish better. And he says, yeah, but next time you'll probably have your data pad with you, you know.
Oh, so they always know the quip to just send it right back at you.
Yeah, I'm like, well, yeah. I said, you know Arabish? He says, yeah, I'm pretty good at Arabish, but there's some other languages around here that, you know, he's like this down here, this thing is ancient. We don't know what the heck this is. And he points and there's like a manhole cover, you know, and it's got English on it. And he's like, none of us can figure out what this is, you know.
All right, my last question, because you're a tech guy, and those of you who don't know, David Sparks, by far one of the most prolific podcasters, bloggers about all things productivity, Mac, Apple, you name it. If you haven't heard of him, you got to go to MacSparky.com and check out all of his field guides, his video field guides, his amazing podcasts. He's kind of like a Yoda to me, I'll say. But though you're a tech guy, there had to have been something kind of cool about going through this experience not tied to your phone, not worried about getting the right photo, not being behind people that are just standing there taking photos. Is there something to be said for experiencing something like this without being tethered to your device?
Oh, yeah. I even though I'm a big writer on technology, I'm also a big advocate of what you call digital minimalism.
Yeah.
And, you know, you need to be experiencing the moments of your life, not looking at them on a 5-inch screen. And so that was great when I was there, that nobody had phones, so you didn't have a lot of that nonsense. And when you go, of course, bring your phone and take pictures. In fact, there's a whole second level of this thing that I haven't experienced yet, where there's an app that you can download. I think it's called Disney Play or something like that. And like you can scan the contents of these crates that are around, because there's little QR stickers on them. And there's a running battle between the Rebellion and the First Order, where people you can actually affect that with the app. Like it's an interactive element of the park, of the planet. So there's things you can do with your technology, and great, do that and have fun. But also, especially the first when you get in there, stick your phone in your pocket and just return to that 10-year-old or however old you were the first time you experienced Star Wars. I mean, you're listening to the show, you love it. Just experience it, because it is so special.
It is. And don't get everyone, you know, backed up in these lines because you're taking all these photos and stuff. Wow. Amazing. I can't wait to go. Hopefully this summer. That would be my hope. Jim's already got a trip planned. Who knows?
Well, you know, loosely planned. But we got to get out there and David, we've got to get you to Rancho Obi-Wan, because I know what a fan you are of.
Oh my God, yes,
of Star Wars, and it's another kind of mecca for Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I always considered Rancho Obi-Wan to be the Disneyland of Star Wars. So it's kind of funny now how there's Star Wars in Disneyland.
Yeah, and it's not like Disneyland is not relevant to this at all. That's the thing. I just can't. I mean, it's amazing because I've never, everything in Disneyland has always been part of Disneyland. They've isolated it in the way they built it. I mean, this was intentional, and it is truly jarring when you leave. It's like coming out of a dream.
Yeah, that's what you were saying. It was kind of like weird to get reacclimated into reality, because all of a sudden you're seeing English and signs and wayfinding and all of that, and it just wasn't there before.
Do they call the bathrooms refreshers?
I didn't see any signs for the bathrooms, but they don't have signs anywhere, honestly. And the bathrooms, though, are Star Wars style bathrooms. I mean, if you go in, I mean, as goofy as it sounds, the urinal separators look like they come out of Star Wars, and the way they did the sink.
Just as long as the urinals don't look like they come out of Star Wars. I don't know if I got
to make those across species, Jim.
Yeah, I don't know if
all kinds of plumbing.
I don't think an Efont man refreshes himself the way a human does.
I know. It's so immersive that the few times you see something that's not in universe, it's jarring. You know.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And
all right,
do they call the coffee calf?
I don't know. I didn't get any.
No coffee.
They probably do. I can't imagine they don't.
Well, in about a year, when when things die down a bit and this becomes your second office, I'm sure you'll be getting the calf.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. It's like
awesome review.
I'm such a nerd. I was telling my wife the other day. I'm like, this literally changes everything. That I can, for the rest of my life, I can get in a car and in 30 minutes be in Star Wars. I can't even wrap my head around it right now.
Yeah, well, it must be nice, to live there and within. God, you get to Disney faster than I get to work. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah,
but you get the earthquakes and all that stuff too. So
mudslides, brush fires.
That's what we tell ourselves out here in the Midwest as tornadoes rip through our backyards.
We have Star Wars. The Earth may swallow me one day, but at least I have Star Wars.
That's right. Which would be a very Star Wars thing to do. But
I'll have a smile on my face.
I piloted the Falcon.
David, thank you so much for taking the time to give us. I mean, this is the most amazing report for Galaxy's Edge, and spoiler heavy, sure, but you really, really made me feel like I was there, and I can't wait to get over there. And when I do, I hope I will in a couple of months. I'll definitely reach out to you.
Yeah, it's magical, guys, and for anybody that's going to go visit, if you take one piece of advice from me, is do kind of dress the part and go and live it.
Shorty robe.
Anybody can go visit this thing, and put on their hashtag ironic face or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Hey, you're a Rebel Force Radio fan. Go in and just live it. Because, when are you going to get to do that?
Now, drop the cynicism. Go all in. Be like that 10-year-old kid that when the cast member comes over and says, "Are you on a mission?" Be like, "No, but I want to be." Be that person. Don't be the stick in the mud.
Yeah. Just go all in. All in.
Yeah, we are.
Right.
They won't be able to get us out. All right. David Sparks, thank you so much. MaxSparky.com. That's the address. Thank you very much, David. We'll be, I'm sure, talking to you as Galaxy's Edge continues to thrill Star Wars fans all across the galaxy.
Guys, I have a plug. I
Yes.
actually have a plug for you.
Yes, please.
Hopefully people have not turned me off already. I should have done this at the beginning. What kind of marketer am I? So I am aware of a Rebel cell that is currently infiltrating itself in Batu. And they have an Instagram account where they will be reporting back to the world.
Uh-huh.
The account is called Batu Rebel, BATUU_Rebel. The underscore is important.
Batu Rebel. And this is, if you're on Instagram, we should follow this.
You should follow it. There's nothing there yet as I record this, but very shortly there's going to be a regular set of pictures. But these are rebels. They have an opinion. Like when they post pictures, they're going to be making comments about it, and it's going to be an interesting feed to follow. Let's just put it that way.
I have just followed Batu Rebel _
Underscore in the middle. Don't forget that.
Right.
Okay. 2 U's.
Right. 2 U's. All right, there it is.
I'd love to get a bunch of Rebel Force Radio followers in there because then they can let the cell know if there's anything they particularly want to see. That'd be good to know because they're going to be reporting out to the outside world regularly.
That's important, and we've got just the right people to help the Batu Rebel do that. So Batu _ Rebel on Instagram. All right, David Sparks, as always, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. Take care.
I'll see you in Batu.
All right. It's a date. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
It's Star Tours on steroids.